Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Krishana Lloyd. We are going to start shortly, and we'll just give a few minutes for people to gather. And as we're gathering and waiting for everyone to join, we will also have a poll that folks can respond to. So you should see that pop up on your screen. And we're really just interested in understanding at what level in the early care and education field you are primarily working. So if you could take a little time to fill out that poll as we're waiting for folks to join, that would be awesome. And we'll start in about 2 minutes. Okay, so I think why don't we jump in and get started? It's about 2 minutes after, and we will show the results of the poll. It looks like the majority of folks, just under the majority, about 49%, are here from the state level. And it looks like about 14, 12, so a little bit about half, maybe a little under half are at the county and the national level. And then we've got some sprinklings in there, folks working at the regional level, the community level, program level, and other. And we know this is primarily working and certainly recognize too that people may be working across systems. Thank you for answering the question. We're excited to have the information and use the information as we plan to move forward with the foundational series and our offerings. It's really helpful to have a sense of who's in the room. So I am Krishana Lloyd. I am one of the co-directors of the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center, and I am very happy to be here today with many of my colleagues to share a little bit about the Foundational Technical Assistance Series. We'll spend about an hour together, and we'll have an opportunity to do a little bit of Q&A for those who may have questions at the end. So you know, the chat has been disabled, so there won't be an opportunity to, have dialogue back and forth among the attendees. We do, however, have the question and answer box open. So if you have questions, we will be compiling those questions, continue to put them in throughout the webinar. And Sandra, who you see to my right, maybe your left, depending on where you're sitting, we'll compile those questions and we'll have an opportunity to run through them towards the end of the webinar. So again, thank you for being here. We can go to the next slide. So this is the disclaimer that we must say before we get started. We're obligated to share this message with you. I'm not going to read the slide word for word, but essentially it says that the work of the center is its own, the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the views or the perspectives of our funder, which is the Administration for Children and Families. And in fact, it's not representative of the other various government federal agencies that are supporting the center's work. And they include the Preschool Development Grants Birth Through 5 program, the Office of Head Start, the Office of Child Care, and the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation. They are our funders, and I want to note that we're incredibly grateful for the funding that they have provided for the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center and for the partnership. We're particularly pleased to be working with our federal project officers, Kimberly Burgess-Sims and Amy Madigan, who we affectionately refer to now as Kami, think Benifer. And we really appreciate their ongoing support and partnering with us to conceptualize and lead the work of the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center. Let's go to the next slide. So during our hour today, we're going to spend a little time getting to know each other. We'll do a welcome so you'll know who's on the team. I will introduce you briefly to the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center. We'll talk a little bit about the structure, the policy areas that kind of undergird and serve as the foundation for our work, and you'll get an introduction to the technical assistance team. I will then turn it over to the team. And you'll hear a little bit about the foundational series itself, a broad overview of what it is, including its goals, its objectives, who will be facilitating the foundational series, the structure, and the expected outcomes. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll also have an opportunity to do a little bit of Q&A. So next slide. Next slide, let's talk a little bit about the center. So the center really focuses on 5 primary activities, and I'll show those in the next slide. You'll see here representatives for 3 of those 5 key activities. There's Tanya Costin, who is co-director of the center and who is also leading the technical assistance arm of the center. She's at the Build Initiative, and you'll hear from Tanya in a little bit. Elena Montoya is our colleague who's at the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment, who we call Berkeley, because SCCE is a mouthful. Elena serves as the research to practice lead, is really the bridge between the research and the technical assistance. And then I, who I've introduced myself earlier, I'm Krishana Lloyd. I am the co-director of the research and the knowledge development activity, and I'm from Child Trends. And what you see here really is a piece that's really key and critical to the center. We have a research arm, we have a technical assistance arm, and we have that research to practice bridge. And that really enables us to conduct research in the service of the early care and education workforce, provide technical assistance, and translate the research to the technical assistance. So that's a feedback loop. That's really important and a unique part of the center. And in fact, it's the first federally funded early care and education center that has the structure and the setup where you have the linkages between research and technical assistance with that RTP or research to practice role. So next slide. And here are the other key activities here. So you saw and you heard a little bit about 2, 3, and 4, the research and knowledge development, the research to practice, and the technical assistance. The other 2 activities, number 1 is leadership coordination and partnership, which is really where the National Early Care and Education Workforce is serving as a convener of all things workforce, really providing that leadership role, that collaboration role, that coordination role across other national centers and other efforts that are occurring across the country related to the early care and education workforce. And then that 5th key activity at the bottom there is really around communications and dissemination, with the idea that we don't want what we're learning to sit on a shelf. What we do is applied in terms of research. What we're learning should be applied in the field, and is a really important part of that research to practice arm. So we want to communicate and we want to disseminate widely the lessons that we're learning in our work, so that people can use what we're learning in their own context. Next slide. Okay, so to do this work, I've mentioned, we've got folks at the table and that leadership team from 3 different organizations, which you see here, Child Trends and Build and the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment. We also have 3 other partners, the University of Massachusetts at Boston, the University of Delaware, and 0 to 3. And they make up what we call the core partners. These folks are all working very hard, have been in the field, accomplished for many years to help us to meet the goals and objectives of the center. And so we work very closely together in moving forward those 5 key activities of the center. Next slide. And then the other piece that's really important to know and to understand is how the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center operates. We rest on a foundation, and that foundation is really based on work that comes out of the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment. And there are 5 essential policy areas that come out of the center, and you see them listed here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them at all because I know you want to get to the meat of the foundational series, but these are what undergird the work of the center. And in fact, these 5 key areas: qualifications and educational supports, work environments, compensation and financial relief, workforce data, and financial resources are also important and key to the foundational series. And when we say foundational series, and and you think, what is that? What does that really need? And what does it mean? The foundational series really just grounds folks in the work of early care and education and the workforce, with the idea that we're starting with a firm foundation. We're building our house on a strong foundation to be able to carry that work forward. So in the foundational series, as you'll hear later from some of my colleagues, we'll talk about the history of the early care and education workforce, the importance of data, how to work across various systems, whether it's national or state or regional, how to use your own leadership, and your own initiative, right? And your own authority and autonomy to move the field forward. And also how best to listen to the workforce to inform the choices that are made. So that's just kind of a brief overview of the foundational series. And it rests on this work, these 5 essential key policy areas that come out of the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment. So that's our foundation and that's our base. And that's what the foundational series rests on as well. Next slide. Okay, I am going to turn it over to my colleague who I introduced you to, Tanya Costin, who is the co-director of the Workforce Center, Early Care and Education Workforce Center, and also the co-lead of technical assistance. So Tanya, take it away.
Thank you, Krishana. We would love to know what regions are represented on the webinar today. So please take a minute to respond to the poll that is currently up. We're just going to take another 30 seconds and then we will share the results. We could bring up the results so we could see where everybody is coming in from. So it looks like in the top 3, region 1, 2, and 3 represent the bulk of those who are participating in today's webinar. Actually, I'm sorry, I misread that. Region 4 and 5, just 1% over those coming in from region 1, 2, and 3, followed by region 6, 7, and 8. And then there is our region 8 with our tribes and region 10. And of course, we are happy to see that we also have representation from our territories. So with that, on the next slide, we would like to highlight for you the actual TA team. I'm happy to introduce you to the National ECE Workforce Center TA team. This 8-member team each represents a region and other work that is coming out of the National ECE Workforce Center. As you can see, for those of you who are in region 10, you have hit the jackpot because you have me as your TA specialist, but each and every one of us on the team brings a diverse set of skills and a knowledge set that will continue to enhance the work, not only of the foundational series, but all work that you're engaging in around the workforce. Next slide, please. At this time, I would like to introduce Julie Beeman Jackson, the co-lead of the TA team for Universal TA Strategies. Julie is going to provide an overview of the foundational series to you. Julie?
Thank you, Tanya, and we can go to the next slide, please. So at a high level, the goals of the foundational TA series focus on supporting leaders to use the 5 policy areas of the Early Childhood Workforce Index from the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment, Berkeley, to transform policies, practices, and programs for the early care and education workforce. Over the course of this series, participants will learn about effective processes to support innovations that are tailored to the needs of the workforce. Next slide, please. More specifically, the learning objectives for the series include participants learning how to use their roles, responsibilities, and influence to make change, analyzing data to identify current strengths, challenges, and gaps, developing approaches to include educator voice into decision-making, and considering new strategies that could be tailored to unique contexts. Next slide, please. This series will be facilitated by leading experts from the BUILD Initiative, Dr. Sherry Killen-Stewart and Dr. Aisha Ray. In addition to Dr. Killen-Stewart and Dr. Ray, guest facilitators from the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment, I should have just said Berkeley, will join specific sessions. Next slide, please. So as we look at the intended audience, as a universal technical assistance strategy, the Foundational TA series is open to anyone who is interested in participating. The series is really intended for anyone who wants to leverage their own leadership and role to transform practices, policies, and programs for the early care and education workforce. For this series, we're focused on leadership as leading from wherever you sit and using your influence. Next slide, please. The Foundational TA series has been intentionally designed as an extended learning opportunity with a specific scope and sequence of learning experiences that build on each other over the course of the series. Participants' learning will be best supported by attending all 6 webinars in the series. Individuals will register for the series as a whole. However, we do recognize that participants may have to miss 1 or 2 webinars over the course of the series. Recordings of each webinar will be available to participants so that they can catch up on the content they missed before joining the next webinar. Next slide, please. The Foundational TA series is comprised of 3 sections, each of which includes 2 webinars for a total, again, of 6 webinars over the course of the series. Throughout the series, participants will be able to explore the 5 policy areas in the Early Childhood Workforce Index to identify leadership needs and interests in their state, territory, tribe, and other entity to advance transformative early childhood workforce policies, practices, and programs. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Sandra Ranum, who is the Senior Technical Assistance Specialist with the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center, and will provide more details about the content and structure of the Foundational series.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing that overview of the series. In addition to the structure that Julie shared, participants in the Foundational TA series will hear about innovative strategies from the collaborating partners working with the National ECE Workforce Center. These partners include All Our Kin, Child Care Services Association, Early Care and Education Pathways to Success, Advanced College, the National Association for Family Childcare, the National Workforce Registry Alliance, P5 Fiscal Strategies, Start Early, and the Donahue Institute. After each section of the series, so after every second webinar, participants will have the opportunity to engage with the National ECE Workforce Center's TA specialists and our collaborating partners through consultative sessions. These consultative sessions provide an opportunity for participants to explore a problem of practice more deeply with the TA specialists, collaborating partners, and their peers, the other participants, in a group setting. After each webinar, participants will be asked to complete a survey to share information about the focus areas they'd like to explore more deeply, and the themes from those survey responses will inform the structure of the consultative sessions. These sessions will be more open-ended and provide opportunity for more interactive experiences, potentially through breakout groups or other activities, depending on what we learn through those surveys. Next slide. Each webinar in the series will be 90 minutes, and you can see the schedule for each webinar and the consultative sessions on this slide. I'll pause here, so if you want to make note of this, you can, but we'll also make these dates available through the registration process. The webinars are on the fourth Monday of each month at 11 a.m. Pacific time, noon Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time, except for the month of December, which we will skip. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. During the first section of this series, participants will learn about the origins of the ECE field and how those origins have led to the current issues facing the ECE workforce. Additionally, participants will look at the importance of using data to address these issues. The next slide, please. In this section, the first webinar will look closely at historical and root causes, as well as what research tells us about the current state of the workforce and the 5 policy areas of the Workforce Index. In the second webinar of that first section, we will dive deeper into the Workforce Index and using multiple sources of data to identify strategies to support the ECE workforce and supports participants in thinking about what data they have available and what additional data might be useful for the problems they would like to solve. Recognizing that the ECE workforce needs to be directly involved in identifying solutions to the challenges they face, the second section of the series will focus on how to connect to the workforce, build networks and leverage relationships to move the work forward, while also understanding how each participant can use their unique expertise and role to impact change. The third webinar will look at how to use data to select who participants should talk to and which communities to engage to be sure cross-system approaches are leveraged in support of the workforce. By the fourth webinar, participants will use the content from the first 3 to consider how they might use their own role and authority to make changes in policies, practices, and programs related to the 5 policy areas of the Workforce Index. Participants will begin to design a plan to address the information they gained through their networks and relationships. In the third section of the series, participants will put together their learning across the first 2 sections to develop responsive and tailored strategies in support of the workforce. Centering the lived experiences of the workforce will be the focus of the 5th webinar, as participants think more deeply about examples of innovations and the levers leaders have available to make change. And finally, in this last webinar, participants will use the Workforce Index and their learning across the series to design changes or improvements to policies and/or practices that lead to solutions for the workforce.
Thank you, Sandra, for that overview of the content for the foundational series. We're excited that the registration for the foundational TA series is open and the link is being put into the chat now. Additionally, you can find more information, including an FAQ for this series on the National ECE Workforce Center's website. That link is also being dropped into the chat. And at this time, we'd like to answer some questions that have been submitted via the Q&A. Sandra, do we have any questions that we can answer for folks today?
Sure. One of the questions is, within the 5 essential policy areas, do you intend to address recruitment and retention strategies in your foundational series?
Hi, Sandra. This is Tanya back. I could answer that question. Throughout the series, we will, along with our collaborating partners, be using innovative strategies to highlight. Also, there will be state examples. So recruitment and outreach will be highlighted within the context of the state examples and the innovative practices our collaborating partners will share with those who participate in the foundational series, along with, other techniques and ideas. You also will get additional information during the consultative sessions. That will be an opportunity to have a deeper dive with not only the TA team and the facilitators, but also our collaborating partners, or other resources that we would need to bring in to ensure your needs and questions are met.
And I apologize that I accidentally only sent the links to our panelists and hosts. So thank you for letting us know that you couldn't see those, but you should be able to see those links now. And so another question in the chat is, what role will workforce registries play through this effort?
So with workforce registries, as you saw in the first part of the series, it does have a focus on data. It is not required that that you participate in a workforce registry or any kind of data system. It is just an opportunity, if you have one, to really use it to help you understand as you go to create feedback loops, as you are creating opportunities of who is not included in the work that you're doing. It also gives you an opportunity really to examine the use or the need for data in your day-to-day work. So if you don't have a data registry, you can still participate. If you do have a data registry, it will be an opportunity for you to reflect on maybe where there are gaps and things that you need to improve, or things that you are doing very well as you engage around the workforce and using these strategies and techniques that are highlighted in the foundational series.
Thank you, Tanya. Another question is, do you recommend that states send teams of people to the TA series?
That is one option. This series is a universal strategy, so everyone can attend. So you can be an individual from a program, an individual from a county or the state. You could be touching the early childhood workforce because you teach in higher ed. But we do believe coming as a team does offer you some opportunities to have thought partners, to be able to spread the examples and the knowledge that you gain during the series to more tables within your state, within your county, or with whatever your reach is as a leader. So the opportunity to come as a team does offer some benefits of that collaboration, but it is not required nor necessary.
So another question that has been submitted is this series and the Workforce Center solely focused on ECE within the childcare realm, or is it inclusive of other professions and career options in ECE?
As a center, we are focused on the entire ECE workforce. So that is beyond just center-based care. So when you think about it could be home-based care, it could be state-funded preschool, it could be trying to think other areas, along with those who come in and provide services and supports. So we'll ask my colleague, Krishana or Elena, if they'd like to jump in to see if I missed anything or could add.
Just to say that So we're working with the workforce that serves ages from birth to before kindergarten across all licensed settings, or registered settings. So that would be childcare centers, whether that is state preschool or a private community-based center or Head Start, and then home-based programs that are licensed or regulated. We are not serving directly the workforce that is professions like home visitors or coaches or trainers. So we're really focused on those educators that are daily working with children, directly providing the education and care services.
Thank you, Elena. And another question that came in is, what are your general objectives with this TA series, and what are your expectations from us as participants? And I can, go ahead, Julie.
So I think really one of the main objectives is to really provide participants with an overview of some of the historical context that have led to some of the challenges with the early care and education workforce, the crises, and also to give participants an opportunity to really think through the different levers that were mentioned in each of the section webinars, such as data, conducting, stakeholder engagement, the different ways so that leaders can start to develop a process for thinking through how to address, a problem of practice related to the workforce that you are experiencing. So that's really what the objective is. It's to give you some of the background, historical information, but also to lay out a process for moving forward to thinking about solutions to the problems that you may be facing, at whatever seat you sit at. So, we ask that all participants come with, an open mind. We also, ask, as we mentioned earlier, because the content does build on each of the sessions, we ask if you can to register. When you register, you'll register for the entire series, but we also ask that you do attend each of the series, each of the sessions within the series, because the content, again, does build upon one another. If you have to miss, we will make that content available to you, so that you're able to watch it and be, ready to participate in the next upcoming session. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to the response about objectives and expectations. The other nice thing about the series is that between each of the sections will be an opportunity for more collaboration and conversation during the course of the consultative sessions, where we'll be bringing folks together to talk about the different challenges you may be experiencing. And, we're hoping to also be able to provide some of the expertise that is available through our core and collaborating partners to, again, help people to start think through moving forward towards developing a process to developing solutions.
Thank you, Julie. Another question is, what approaches to compensation are being considered for the ECE workforce?
I can try to take this one. I'm not sure if the question is about specifically for the foundational series or for the center as a whole and our approach to research and technical assistance. I think our role really is to work with states, programs, localities, Head Start programs, etc., to understand where they are and what their needs are. And then we have a variety of ways, including our COP on developing salary scales and cost models, where we can talk through what we've seen be effective strategies that people are using, talk through how we can support you in doing things like developing a salary scale or a cost model, but really trying to understand, based on where you are, what is feasible given your funding, given the structure of your program or state or system that you're working within. And so I think that it's not just one approach that we're focusing on, but really trying to understand what you need and what strategies we know about through our research in TA that have worked well for people, and how we can support you in trying to do something similar.
Thank you, Elena. And there was a request to go back to the slide with the schedule of dates. So Ingrid, if you can go back to that slide, and we can also answer some other questions. Is this focus mostly for state level teams?
I can take that one. No, this is not focus on state level teams. It could be, if you are participating as a state level team, is fine, but it could be a county level team. It also could be a team at the program level. So it is really a universal strategy and opportunity for everyone across the workforce, the early childhood workforce, to participate.
Thank you, Tanya. And someone is wondering if there is a fee for this TA series.
Everyone should be aware all of the TA that will be offered by the National ECE Workforce Center is free. So whether it is you have an opportunity to participate in a community of practice or the foundational series or a future TA, it will be free of charge.
And a couple of people are wondering about how many people can participate in the series.
So the foundational series is considered one of our universal technical assistance offerings. So we don't have a limit per se on how many people can participate. The registration will be open, and we will accept as many registrants as are interested.
Thank you, Julie. A couple of other questions about kind of registration logistics. Could the link for registering be a calendar invite, and could they get that via email? And I can just share, we will send out the recording of this webinar as well as that registration link via email to everybody who registered for today's webinar. So if you all who are here today will get that. And once you register for the series, you will get the calendar invites from Zoom for each of the sessions. And then another question is, does participation in this TA opportunity require that a state or agency send a team to all webinars to formulate a workforce plan?
So that would not be a requirement that that states send a team to develop a plan. Again, because this is considered one of our universal technical assistance offerings, we are really, one of our objectives is to really just help people to start to think about how they would potentially go about solving a process, solving a problem of practice that they're experiencing. So thinking more so about that process, but not actually moving forward towards developing an actual work plan. The Workforce Center does have other offerings, such as our communities of practice, where we were asking state teams to come and participate specifically in the COPs, and they'll be running throughout the course of the year, but for the foundational series, that's not a requirement.
Thank you, Julie. Another question, when you say ECE workforce supporting educators birth through kindergarten, does that include district-based transitional kindergarten and district kindergarten educators?
Yes, when we're talking about this workforce, again, it can be in a variety of settings, whether that be a school-based program such as TK or a state preschool program that is on a district campus. So really the focus is on the age of children and the type of work. So those educators, whether they be home-based or center-based in a variety of settings, including things like TK and school-based sites.
Thank you, Elena. And our family, friend, and neighbor providers also integrated?
Our current focus really is on home-based providers that work with a organized group of children in that sort of group setting that we see in licensed family and childcare homes. Understanding that the family, friend, and neighbor workforce is extremely important to the childcare needs of families and just to the work of early childhood. Family, friend, and neighbors are definitely part of our thinking as part of we're thinking through research and TA activities. That piece of the sort of workforce puzzle is there. However, currently our focus is on the groups we described earlier in terms of the direct TA and research that we will be beginning with for the National EC Workforce Center.
Thank you. And we just have a few more questions in the chat, but feel free to keep submitting some since we do still have time left in the hour. The next question is, within the context of Montessori, is it possible to invite Montessori advocates, professionals to lend their voice and work?
And again, I think this is directed specifically for the foundational series, but I mean, just in general, again, as part of a center-based type of early childhood education, Montessori programs would fully be included and eligible to participate in any of our technical assistance opportunities.
Thank you, Elena. And certainly from the perspective of the foundational TA series, all of the leadership processes and innovations that will be shared, it's not, it's curriculum agnostic, and so it would be relevant for providers from any perspective in the early care and education field. The next question is there a way to find out others from our state that registered so we could collaborate, debrief, and plan together? And I'm wondering how we might share that information and also protect confidentiality, but there definitely would be opportunity certainly within the consultative sessions for interaction. And that could be a place that you would likely be able to connect with folks who might be in your area or region or state. And just two more questions that are in the chat right now. Could you take a team approach where you each attend every other series and share the information? We are a team of 2 and need to be mindful of our time.
As Julie mentioned earlier, these webinars will be recorded. So people will have the opportunity to view them outside of the scheduled sessions, because we do understand people's time commitments.
Thank you, Tanya. Curious if someone who has completed a TA portfolio accreditation in their state is suited for this, or is it for more entry-level TA professionals? And I would say that this series is really intended for those who are doing work that directly connects with the workforce in some capacity. And so depending on the background of the TA portfolio that you've completed, which I'm not sure what that might be, but this would help anyone who attends to really think about, again, those root causes what data is needed to understand the workforce that you are connected to and how to learn from that workforce, and then use your role and influence in drafting possible solutions for moving forward. And another question, would this series be beneficial to state level team considering forming a statewide childcare provider voice council? And I would say absolute. Oh, Julie, you want to go ahead?
I was going to say absolutely. One of the sessions and section of the foundational series will be exclusively about, you know, getting that educator voice. So I think it would be really appropriate if you're considering forming a provider council. I think that some of the, for sure, the information presented through the foundational series will provide you with some resources and tools to be able to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. Is there a stipend involved in these cohorts? And again, this series is open to anyone who would like to participate. So it isn't structured through cohorts, and there is not currently a stipend available in order to attend this series. But as we also shared, there's also no cost to attend this series. And our final question is, if we would like to connect with others sooner than January with others, is there an opportunity to collaborate and share our email with others? And again, that's one, I'm not sure if others on the team have thoughts about that, but I'm thinking about how we might be able to share that. And that's something that we could consider and look into. At this point in time, we don't have a direct plan for that, but we can explore that possibility. And the final question in chat is, can you receive CEUs? And so we are exploring that possibility because this is open to a large number of participants, and there is the option to watch recordings versus attend. We won't be offering clock hour training certificates, but we are exploring the option to partner with one of our collaborating partners for issuing CEUs and what would be involved in the requirements to meet the standards of issuing CEUs. So that is under exploration, and we will share that information out as soon as we have made a decision in that area and found our path that way. So I am going to move us to, if we can go to our last couple of slides, Ingrid, we want to just share more ways to stay in touch with the National ECE Workforce Center. We do have a newsletter that you can subscribe to, and so I encourage you to go to our website and sign up, and that's the best way to get the most current information about what's happening in the Workforce Center. And I'll pull a link in just a moment to take you directly to that subscribe page. Also want to share, and I know the question came up about recruitment and retention strategies, and we do have a campaign that we'll be launching in October to share out a recruitment and retention toolkit and share really up and coming and exciting strategies for recruitment and retention from across our partners and other states and communities. And so be on the lookout for that information. And finally, our last slide is when you exit this survey, you will be prompted, or exit this Zoom, you will be prompted to complete a survey. And this will give us really valuable information about the information we've shared with you all today and your interest in the Foundational TA series. And that will be valuable as we're continuing to make plans for the series, and encourage you to complete that survey. You will, as I mentioned, you will also get a follow-up email with the recording to this webinar and the registration link. and you'll be prompted with a little reminder about that survey again as well. We are very much appreciative of you attending and participating today and all of the great questions that you submitted.